Welcome to the RevOps Lab, a podcast exploring the art and science of revenue operations. To find more episodes and resources on scaling your revenue engine, visit getweflow.com/RevOps. Okay, welcome to another edition of the RevOps Lab podcast. We are here with Natalie Furness, and very excited to have you here. Quick introduction around you. You study biomechanics and neurophysiology. Hard word for me to pronounce. As your BA, and then worked in clinical operations manager, actually at a prison where you worked on reducing the opioid addictions, or basically becoming addicted again. From there, you moved step by step more into marketing and sales focused roles. First, also still at more like in a medical field, at medical chain, then at Dust Aid. And then from there, when you look at your CV, it feels like you continually then step by step moved more and more into marketing roles, fractional and consulting positions at various companies of different sizes and ages. And now you are the founder and CEO of RevOps Automated, which is a full service RevOps agency. And you're also, I think, the founder and president of Customer Data Automation and RevOps Research, a group that publishes papers and studies around revenue operations. Natalie, welcome.
Thanks, Philip. Thanks for a great introduction. It's really interesting to hear that whole journey back to you, actually. It's quite interesting because I started my life, as you mentioned, in this kind of very engineering, clinical kind of understanding both the humans and the way that the body works. So very kind of engineering. Then moved into operations, then marketing, then sales, then almost all the way back into operations with marketing and sales. And I've never really heard the journey like that. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. Is it a correct sort of depiction of your career? Would you say it's fair?
Yeah, I'd say it is. The only thing which, of course, we don't all put on our LinkedIn's is all our number of side hustles we've had over the years. All the little experiments that we've done with side hustles. I've had a few businesses over the years. My first one was when I was 8, actually. I sold friendship bracelets on the playground. And then when I was at university, I started my first proper business in the dance sector. So I did my own go-to-market for that. And then, of course, you sort of covered the fractional stuff, which was always kind of like side hustles as I grew. So, yeah.
Okay. But now you're fully invested into revenue operations, right? So there's a consultancy. You do support for all types of businesses, I think, both for HubSpot, for Salesforce, but also for other CRMs and the relating systems. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I had this vision that I wanted to help businesses solve their go-to-market operations, revenue operations challenge, no matter their technology stack. Because I think sometimes you can focus on one technology and then forget that really revenue operations is about the alignment of people, processes, and data systems, and technology is part of that. So we run a revenue operations managed services and also RevOps transformation for businesses who currently exist either on HubSpot, Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics, and it's all about very much helping people have this single view of truth and also alignment between all of their departments. And that's what we do today.
Yeah, alignment of all the different departments. I think that's something that really resonates with me, Natalie, also because I just this week I reread the last annual revenue operations report. That's where you also are one of the editors and publishers, I think. And on one of the first pages of that report, there's basically a definition of what is RevOps. And I'm paraphrasing, but it's something around, it's a business methodology focused on scaling revenue through alignment. And the alignment part is essentially focused on 3 different things: people, data, and then also the processes relating to that.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think it's this word alignment that really, if you're in revenue operations, that's what you need to focus on. And if all the time, no matter what you're doing, you're thinking about alignment between people, or alignment of processes across departments, or alignment of data visibility across departments, you're always going to be moving in the right direction with what you're doing. So alignment really is that key word.
I feel like this is one of the the things where everybody agrees on, also on LinkedIn, right? Like everybody posts about alignment, super important. Seems like everybody's very, very aligned on alignment.
Yeah.
But then, like in reality, it's extremely hard, right? Like, why is that? Like from your point of view, why is alignment one of the hardest things to do?
That's such a great question. Most of the time, from what I have observed in practice, so of course we can research it all we like, read all we like, but actually in practice, when I sit in businesses, no matter how big or how small, the problem with alignment is the fact that the goals are not aligned across the business. There is not a key North Star metric that everybody is running towards. There is not. Sometimes the department level goals are not aligned with the North Star metric, and departments are incentivized to compete against each other within departments. Now, there is healthy competition, so I understand why they put that sort of gamification on it, but to build true alignment, we need to make sure that we have that North Star metric, and then roll down like the OKRs or the KPIs, whatever you use in your business, to align with that North Star metric, but also not to conflict with other departments. And sometimes I don't think that businesses think about it at that higher level, because the way you commission, the way you bonus structure, the way you set your OKRs for your teams will automatically affect if they will align or compete or clash. I think that's the biggest thing for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've all been there and seen that. What would you recommend, or what are you recommending your clients to how to change that?
We often run some workshops with the C-suite, starting right from the top, to understand like what are the metrics that really matter to the business, and that often comes down to what are the metrics that really matter to the investors or the future investors that you're going to want to raise funds from. And making sure that that's really communicated transparently down to your marketing, sales, customer success leaders, and then making sure that individual KPIs, OKRs are then aligned with that at a team level. And that itself, that's a transformation project of the way you run goals as a business, that can take time. So that's usually where we would start. And then also making sure that you're running cross-department workshops. I think a lot of the strategies and the way that we build go-to-market motions are built with individual teams rather than like multidisciplinary teams. So I'm going to use like a healthcare analogy just because, that's very much my background, is what we used to do when we were looking at operations for better patient care was you would have, if someone's having a surgery, you wouldn't just have the surgeon in the room. You'd have the pre-ops department, you'd have the nurse, you'd have the physio, you'd have the doctor, you'd have the surgeon, all around discussing the holistic care of that patient. What's going to happen before to mean that they have the best surgery, so they have the best recovery, so they come out of hospital. Business, like what we do is the same, but we need to care for our customers rather than our patient. So we need to have in the same room, okay, well, what is their first impression of our business? What's really going to generate that awareness, marketing, brand? What does that look like? Sales, how can you tap into that? How can we then start measuring it intent? And we need to start creating this idea of bringing multidisciplinary teams together to set go-to-market strategies rather than siloing. And that's my thought on that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that resonates really well. I mean, back when we scaled Fiber to 350 people, what we saw often was that there's the incentives, right, in the KPIs, but then also there's the organizational structure and how you basically approach the different like handover point. I'm curious what your thoughts are, especially with regards to organizational structure of go-to-market teams. How does good look like for you?
And what does good look like? I think the challenges with what good looks like is good is in the context of your go-to-market motion itself. Sure. We first need to recognize that every business has a different go-to-market motion. Some businesses are focused on a product-led go-to-market. Some are more focused on marketing inbound. Some are more focused on sales outbound. Some are more focused on partner. These are the different motions. What I'm seeing more and more, though, is a multidisciplinary go-to-market motion where businesses now have sales-assisted product, or they have sales-assisted marketing, or they'll have a partner. They'll have all of, not just one. So in terms of what good looks like in terms of the structuring, you need to have an alignment over a go-to-market motion. Rather than thinking about it in individual teams, think about it in motions. So what is the alignment of our product-led growth motion? Because let's face it, for someone to join your product or to even sign up for free, they're going to need to look at some marketing assets. So marketing is involved there. Then they're going to need to be in product. So then you've got your in-product marketing. And then you've got your product team who are, making sure that you're looking at the activity and the way that these people are utilizing the tool, which then is going to flag up potential opportunities, which then might trigger a salesperson to reach out to that person, or depending on the score, a different marketing campaign to reach out before it goes to sales. That whole motion requires a multidisciplinary approach. So every motion should have its own multidisciplinary approach. I don't think there's one motion I can think of that doesn't require skills from marketing, sales, customer success, and product, really.
Yeah.
So that's my thoughts anyway.
Yeah, I think that resonates super well with me. I mean, as a founder, I think you think about all these different things, right? And the product has a big impact on go-to-market success, but without strong go-to-market motion, you can build the shiniest, best product and nobody cares, right? So if you think about that org structure, I mean, obviously there's been a rise of RevOps, there's been a rise of the CRO, but then still often the CRO is a new title of the CSO. I mean, I'm curious what your thoughts are about, actually the CRO owning everything end to end. What should be their backgrounds? Where do you see shortcomings? I mean, you're smiling, so you probably can't see that in the audience, but I'm curious your thoughts about this topic.
Do you know what I'm really excited about? That Sixth Sense have just promoted their CMO Lani to their CRO. I'm excited by that because it's so nice to see people from some different backgrounds come into the CRO positions. My view is that if you're a head of sales and you've only worked in sales and sales is all you have ever known and you have a blinkered view that sales is everything to do with a business growing, that's not a CRO. It's just not. Now, if you're a sales leader who's also been involved with a marketing motion, who's also been involved with understanding how product works, who also has had some experience even in customer service, great. That's a great CRO. Or if you are an end-to-end marketer who also has experience of selling, I think that makes a great CRO. I think marketers let themselves down when they assume they know how it feels to sell, and they've never sold themselves. So if you're a marketer out there looking to move into RevOps, just go feel what it feels like to sell. Because if you can't empathize with a salesperson, it's going to be very difficult to lead and build processes for them. I've also met a few engineers that have ended up gone from a product side into more of a CRO position, which I found quite interesting. I haven't met too many of those. I have met a lot of CROs that become blockers to the development of good revenue operations because they're only focused on sales. But I've also met some CROs that have come from sales backgrounds who are happy to admit that they don't know everything. So therefore, they empower their CMOs and their, head of customer success and their RevOps teams to fill in the gaps for them. And I don't think necessarily a great CRO has got any, yes, background matters. It's nice to have like a multidisciplinary background, to have some generalist background, maybe with an area of specialty, but then to be aware, this is my area of specialty and these are the areas I am not as skilled at. And the greatest skill of a CRO is to know where their weaknesses are and put the right people in those places to elevate the business. And I think that's the true trait of a great CRO.
And it sounds to me, Neely, like really what you're advocating is stopping with matrix types organization or matrix style organizations and really thinking about like, okay, how can we structure our business in a way that there's not really any chance from like a organizational kind of like perspective to even create these silos. And it sounds to me like if I continue that kind of like train of thought, like it would mean to me that okay, actually you would have to have sales enablement teams, analytics teams, and so on, all sort of like report into a RevOps type of person. Would you say that's true, or am I going too far here?
I'm just thinking for a second. I don't know if everyone should report into a RevOps person, but I certainly feel that revenue operations should help lead the way in which teams do their reporting. So slightly different. So what I see in a lot of businesses is that teams are left to their own devices on the dashboards. They build their own dashboards. Sales thinks they need this dashboard, so they build this dashboard because it's going to help them achieve what they want. Marketing build this dashboard. Customer success, customer service, they build their own dashboards and then perhaps instruct RevOps on what needs to be built. Now, my thought is this should be flipped, and that RevOps should help the team see what needs to be built so that they can all be achieving their OKRs and then the higher business OKRs. Give them the framework and the templates for them to do their reporting. And then we should be coaching the leaders on being able to run coaching sessions with their departments on those dashboards, which have been approved as dashboards that actually roll up to the higher goals. So I don't know if that quite answers the question, but that's how I see the function of RevOps.
Yeah. So it's more like a facilitator role that enables the other teams to work to the best alignment, like with the best alignment possible, right? Is that fair?
I see it very much as a really important backstage role. Like if you go to the theater, you see the artists, you see the performers, you see the amazing sets, you see the amazing special effects, you have this amazing experience in the audience. What you don't realize is that there are a ton of people wearing black in the wings behind the set, moving all these things, orchestrating and making that experience work. Because, without the costumes, without the lights, without the special effects, that performance would be people doing something on a bare stage. So that's kind of how I see revenue operations.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting. We started out with, okay, what is the North Star? What are the, few KPIs that matter? And the notion of thinking about the go-to-market end-to-end, right? Like basically from all things, including product even, right? Like marketing, sales, post-sales, product. How do you make that a success? And RevOps essentially being the owner of the KPIs, enabling the teams to be more successful instead of, reacting to what's actually happening and what the wish list is, right? which I think is always a problem if you have multiple teams with different incentives. And the reality is that most marketing, sales, and success teams have different incentives in our today's life, right? So having a central function that looks at it end to end and also owns the enablement, the reporting, the insights in an enablement function makes complete sense to me. I'm curious, like, if you think about the RevOps team structure, how do you achieve that successfully? And I mean, obviously it's in context of stage of the company, size of the company, and also complexity of the products, right? So I don't think there's like a clear answer, but let's say, maybe you choose, the dimensions, and then would be curious how you see the structure.
Yeah. I think deciding what structure you're going to move towards very much, as you said, depends on where you are now. Mm-hmm. If you are starting from fresh, from zero, like you have no RevOps function, my thoughts would be focus on having a data insights analyst, focus on having, a revenue operations data manager who maybe focuses on the CRM, maybe even have a couple of people in the RevOps side that are managing different tools but communicating together, then having a RevOps director who is more focused on the strategy for revenue operations across the whole business, so that we're not actually getting these, silos of marketing, sales, customer service, or success operations. However, it's difficult to transform into that completely agnostic practice, if you already have marketing ops, sales ops, and customer service ops in practice. Now, this is a debate that I had with Mike Rizzo, who runs Marketing Ops Pro, about should we take away these specialisms and actually make people fully aligned across all? And it's hard for people who are marketing ops specialists, sales ops specialists, customer ops specialists, because they kind of in themselves are creating silos because they're focused on that one area. And actually what's been really interesting is I found that these people in themselves compete against each other. The marketing ops person is trying to outdo the sales ops person, who's trying to outdo the customer success ops person. So that's creating even more silos. And I think maybe that's because these people report up to the CMO, the CSO, or VP of sales, and then the director of customer service. Maybe the way to do it is to take that marketing ops, sales ops, customer success operations, sit a revenue operations director on top of them, and then those people report to the revenue operations director who has the view of everything. Pop a specific analyst in there who can be feeding back the data analysis and the feedback loop. If you're looking to do a transformation, that's probably how I would look to do it if you have those three specialists in the area.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, I worked in gaming a lot in my past life. And one thing that happened there during my time was that really this role of the data scientist came up for the first time, really much more professional, really proper data analytics. And that was obviously extremely important for mobile game development. You always want to look at retention, LTV development, and so on. And you have a lot of data points, so it's great. And the way that we organized that was basically, so data science was its own team. But they didn't have their own office space, but basically they were embedded in the different development teams for the different games. So the data science team was extremely well aligned because they did their own stand up every morning. But then the data scientists then went to all the game teams that they worked in and worked with, and then brought back insights from the the morning stand up that they have, but then worked on the respective projects in the individual teams. Which made a lot of sense to me, right? I think there's also for me a way to solve it. It's this, if you have challenges within your current organization and you cannot just change everything, you cannot just put a director of revenue operations in front of the sales enablement manager, or if you don't want to break that setup, I think there is also this option of like embedding people in the teams. And that also fits very well to the service character or like support character. I think that RevOps easily can take up.
Yeah, I love that. I think people underestimate the power of this like data analytics role in general, like having someone whose job it is to almost be like an unbiased outlook, like so they don't sit in any team, as you said, and be able to feed like, guys, I know that you're emotionally attached to this stuff, but what the data says is this. And I'm an outsider. It's like having an outside consultant and bringing them into your business. They can help you achieve a lot more. And I really like that idea, Philip, as you're sort of saying about projects. I think RevOps should definitely be involved in more projects, coming in to departments, doing mini transformation projects, just like you would pay an external consultancy to do. Think of your RevOps as that team to really, elevate, accelerate, run those impactful projects. RevOps is not a servant to the teams. RevOps is the team that comes in as that strategy and then implements the systems that are going to help businesses scale.
Yeah, I have a pretty strong opinion on autonomous teams. I think that in the past life, like many companies had a lot of silos and they just had silos and they just couldn't execute on many things because they didn't have the skill sets, right? If you think about a revenue organization, I think RevOps often brings in those skill sets that are fundamentally missing. That is system thinking, process thinking, enablement thinking, data insights, and right. And then there is, I think, some sort of specialization makes sense if you think about how complicated marketing attribution has gotten and things like that, right? But I still think it's so important to have that centrally. Think about the general go-to-market motion as you outlined, right? Because if you don't have that, you start building your own tech stack, you start building your own incentives, right? And so I think just embedding isn't good enough anymore. I think you need basically a central view of the entire go-to-market motion. And to the earlier example of what is a good chief revenue officer, right? Like I think I think it's just something that back in the days was done as business integration teams in a central way, and you looped in request and waited 3 weeks for something to happen. That and that is just not fast enough anymore in our day.
For sure. And as we're having these conversations, it really does depend on the size of your business, where you are, all those sorts of things. Because, we've got more challenges now where there's lots of businesses that are remote and distributed and actually don't even meet face-to-face on a weekly basis. There's all these things. And one thing we haven't talked about that I think is really important to acknowledge as well is actually building a culture of alignment.
Sure.
Actually thinking about how do we build a culture alignment from day one in a business. And it's something that I'm testing and trialing at the minute at RevOps Automated as I build the business. I'm like thinking, right, I want to build it with a RevOps mindset from day one, build it with this alignment. And it's been really fascinating, the small things that I've seen people do that is causing silos. Like, for example, we've started creating this sales playbook. And I wanted the sales playbook to be this continuously evolving collaborative document where as people learn things, they kept adding. But actually what was happening is as people learned things, they just started taking their own notes and not adding them to the document. So we had to almost have this session of like, what are the barriers? Why do people feel like they can't add it to this central document? And it was really funny what, came out of it. People were like, oh, but, I'm worried about my spelling or, it's not neat. And actually some of those barriers for like the alignment and wanting to share information has got a lot to do with just humans worrying about what the quality of their work is and sharing and collaborating and actually breaking down those barriers. We want to unsilo everything. All documents should be shared, should be working, should be joined together, because otherwise, as soon as people get used to kind of having their own documents and storing them and not sharing them, we've got silos. So I just wanted to share that because it's something personal that I've learned quite recently, and I think it's important.
Yeah, it's such an important and also challenging thing, right? As Philip mentioned in the beginning, and I love that you're touching on culture. I'm a big believer that it's the way you act day to day, right? It's not what you write on your walls, but it's actually the operating principles. And if your leadership team, especially the leadership team, doesn't embrace that in the revenue organization, it's really hard to solve it from my point of view. Because if you're an AE and you're comped on 50-50 plus 20-25, right? Like it's clear that maybe you don't spend as much time on alignment. Of course, you can have a better version of that, but if you culturally embrace that, but still, that is just a reality in most companies these days. But if the leadership team doesn't recognize that, it is just fundamentally broken. And I think the org structure has a big impact on that fact, right? Like, and then what kind of operating rhythm the business has and who sits in those meetings or documents, whether that's synchronous or asynchronous, is also really, really important. Love that point. It's so important.
Yeah. And just to kind of riff off that, it just made me remember an ex-client of mine, and I'm not going to name any names here, but there was a particular founder, CEO, who turned around after we'd done a lot of work on the RevOps and said, I don't want to hear the word RevOps. I don't agree. It's not something I'm into. I don't want RevOps. Then they went and did their round of funding, which they didn't manage to achieve because all the investors said they weren't showing operational efficiency and profitability. So instead of a round, they got a bridging round. And now, guess what? They're focused on RevOps. So I wanted to share that with the audience as well, because particularly in this day and age, if you have a leader who doesn't seem to be focused on this revenue operations or this idea of creating operational efficiency, really focus on, if we want to raise our next rounds, if we're focused on getting some of the best investors, or, even if you're looking at getting acquired, these margins matter. Profitability matters. And those days in which investors just have tons of money to throw at any business are gone. Okay, so operational efficiency, if your business can out-operate your competition, you are going to win funding over others.
Yeah, founders, executive, listen up. Those are some wise words. Fully agree. On that note, I think we always ask all our guests one closing question, and definitely want to ask you the same. So here it comes. What advice would you give yourself when starting your career all over again?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me, and this is something that I'm trying to teach more and more RevOps people because I wish I'd learned this, is focus on impact. When you are designing a project that you want to implement in a business, look at measurable impact. I know you're going to say, well, I don't know what the impact is because I haven't done the project yet. How do I know how much time this is going to save? Or how do I know how much money this is going to save the business? Do what your sales teams do. Forecast, estimate, use a model that you can think of. Estimate, okay, well, if this all goes to plan, it will save the business this much time. The time for the business's work, the equivalent of this, which will free up the team to do this, which could have an impact on this metric. Build those metrics, because I guarantee when you're putting that proposal in front of key stakeholders in the business, you are going to be able to do that RevOps transformation you want to do if you forecast the impact. That's what I would have wished I knew.
Love it.
Yeah, I think very common, right? New starters in jobs like focus too much on like making a nice spreadsheet or like having everything perfect. Just like run focus by impact. Yeah. Perfect. Love it. Cool. Natalie, thank you very much for joining. It's been a pleasure. And all the best and looking forward to the next State of RevOps report.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening to this episode of the RevOps Lab podcast. Please consider to like and subscribe our show and give us a 5-star rating on wherever you're listening. If you have feedback or suggestions, let us know at podcast@getweflow.com. We read and reply to every email. Thank you.